the purified members of his household and progeny. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. Respected sisters, dear brothers, Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Continuing with our theme of distinguishing between truth and falsehood, we are today, inshallah, going to look at the same theme and the same topic from a different lens, this time from the lens of Islamic history, by focusing on an important chapter related directly to the tragedy of Karbala. And this is a chapter that follows the events of Karbala immediately. And this chapter is the revolution of Al-Mukhtar Al-Thakafi. The reason we study this personality and this event is manifolds. First of all, as we said, we are trying to distinguish between truth and falsehood from all the lenses and angles that we can have the opportunity to look at. And as we shall see, the personality and the movement of Al-Mukhtar became something controversial during its time, and the controversy and the debates have not stopped about it until today. Secondly, it helps us to better understand the tragedy of Karbala itself, and it helps us to understand what were some of the repercussions of Karbala afterwards. In part, it helps us to understand, was Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam successful in his mission or not? What happened to society after Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam? And beyond understanding the controversy and understanding the history around this event, we want to focus on what lessons can we draw from this chapter of Islamic history and the biography of Al-Mukhtar himself. So we begin with a quick historical analysis. Al-Mukhtar is a man who was born the same year that the Holy Prophet ﷺ migrated from Mecca to Medina, year 1 of Hijrah. And he was killed year 67 of Hijrah, meaning that he was 67 years old. And this would make him about 4 years older than Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam throughout his life. Al-Mukhtar was born in a family, in a tribe, in a clan of Thaqif. Thaqif were known for a number of traits. One of their traits was that they were not specifically known to be very close to Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. The majority of Thaqif were not with Ahlul Bayt. They were not with Imam Ali alayhi salam, nor with the rest of the Imams, but there were exceptions. And one of the exceptions was the father of Al-Mukhtar himself, Abu Ubaid, or some books of history refer to him as Abu Ubaidah. Abu Ubaidah was a companion of the Holy Prophet ﷺ. And like the rest of the family, the rest of the tribe of Thaqif, they were known to be brave warriors. And within that tribe itself, he was known to be a commander and a leader. When you have a whole tribe of people who are brave warriors and you say that someone is a military leader, a military commander, that gives you an idea that this is not an ordinary warrior, nor is being a warrior equivalent to being a leader. And he was both a military and political leader, and he was himself a brave warrior. He fought wars with the Holy Prophet ﷺ, as well as with Imam Ali alayhi salam, and he remained faithful to Imam Ali alayhi salam. And his son grew up following in the footsteps of his father for sure. This is what we know in general from the, let's say, social, cultural background of Al-Mukhtar Al-Thakafi. Beyond that, and a quick remark, and we'll come back to it, he was born seemingly into wealth. And he became even wealthier later as a result of his own business transactions. And these are important things to know about Al-Mukhtar, but we'll come back to his personality a little bit later. We'll skip the part of his life where he grew up, his teenage years, his youth years. There's a lot to talk about, and we don't have a lot of time, so we're focusing on the relevant parts. The next portion of the life of Mukhtar that becomes very relevant to us is the moment the messenger of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam enters al-Kufa. Muslim ibn Aqil enters the city of Kufa. We need to understand what happens here. Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam was living in Medina. He clearly indicated that he was not going to pay allegiance to Yazid, who had just become the Khalifa, appointed himself through his father Muawiyah as the Khalifa. Imam al-Hussein rejected to pay allegiance, and so he left al-Madinah al-Munawwara towards Mecca. In Mecca, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam started to receive messengers, many of them coming from Kufa, coming from Basra and elsewhere, many of them carrying bags and bags of letters to Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. The Imam received thousands of letters, each of them representing a family or a clan or a tribe or a group of people, telling him, we are ready for you to accept you as a Khalifa. We are waiting for you. We are in the southern area of Iraq, Kufa and Basra. All you need to do is to come here and we are ready to support you. Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, at that point, he dispatches his cousin and he writes in the letter to them that I am sending towards you my cousin and my brother and the most trustworthy member of my household. And these are very significant words from Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam about Muslim ibn Aqil. And he sends him towards Kufa. And we will skip the journey of Muslim all the way to getting to Kufa. We have recounted it in the past in detail, and inshallah in the future we will again. When Muslim ibn Aqil arrives to Kufa, he goes specifically to the house of Al-Mukhtar Al-Thakafi. Why? Not only because of his own understanding and his own strategic mind and his own understanding of the landscape in Kufa in general and who he should associate with, but because Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam told him before he left, I want you to go to the house of the person who is the most trustworthy man in Kufa. So he went to the house of Al-Mukhtar Al-Thakafi. This is an important indication to keep in mind about who Al-Mukhtar is in the minds of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. Muslim ibn Aqil begins to work along with the prominent figures and the influential figures of Al-Kufa to start to gather the support for Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam and his movement. In a very short amount of time, they were able to gather through Hani ibn Urwa and the efforts of Al-Mukhtar and others. They secured at least 18,000 people who are paying their allegiance, men who are coming and paying their allegiance to Muslim ibn Aqil, that they will be supporters of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam should the Imam come or need any of their assistance. This we know from the fact that Muslim ibn Aqil himself wrote a letter to Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam in which he indicated this number. He told him, I have secured 18,000 men who have paid their allegiance to you. History says, in fact, this number continued to grow up to potentially 40,000. At the end, there were 40,000 men with their families and their tribes who had come to pay their support and allegiance to Muslim ibn Aqil and through him to Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. This movement became a little too clear. The spies and the enemy started to notice what was going on. Who noticed? Of course, Al-Mukhtar noticed that they are now being under scrutiny, being watched very closely, and Muslim ibn Aqil himself also noticed. So Muslim left the house of Al-Mukhtar and he went to the house of another of the companions of Imam Ali alayhi salam, preparing the ground for Imam al-Hussein, Hani ibn Urwa. And in fact, from that point on, Muslim ibn Aqil started to move around in Kufa. He didn't stay in one place. In the meantime, Al-Mukhtar, because he is a very well known, he represents his tribe, he's a very wealthy man, he's a known politician, he's a known soldier and warrior. There's too much attention on him. He left Kufa entirely. He had a lot of lands outside of Kufa, so he went to stay a little while in some of his lands. There was no agreement between Muslim ibn Aqil and Al-Mukhtar and others on exactly what would happen next. This took them by surprise. And so Al-Mukhtar was simply waiting for things to calm down. He waited a little while and he came back. By the time he came back, Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, who was now in Kufa, who had taken over the rule of Kufa as the new governor, Yazid had sent him, because of how ruthless and violent he is, to destroy any potential support that may emerge in Kufa towards Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, especially sent him from Basra. He was the governor over Basra. He came from Basra to also take over Kufa. And he was ruthless. And in that little amount of time that Al-Mukhtar was away from Kufa, everyone that was considered to be a leader, a companion of Imam Ali alayhi salam, or a leader of the Shia, or someone who would support Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, had either been killed or imprisoned, or they had left Kufa and they had escaped. By the time Al-Mukhtar comes back, all of this had happened. Al-Mukhtar did not know all of this. As soon as he enters Kufa, the men of Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, they capture him, they bring him to Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad. Until now, we would say, books of history and so on and so forth, Al-Mukhtar hasn't done anything yet. No one really knows that Al-Mukhtar has done anything. Yet as soon as Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad sees him, he used to carry a rod, a metal rod in his hand. He hit him on the face with his metal rod. And he split his face open from over his eye until the bottom of his lips. And he ordered that he be brought to jail without any questions asked, without any interrogation of what role he may have played or anything of this sort. Because he knew and he understood the role that Al-Mukhtar is playing behind the scenes and how important he is to this whole movement. So Al-Mukhtar is brought to jail at that point in time. As we said, a lot of the Shia were already in jail. This is very relevant because there is one specific man in jail that we think, scholars think, was extremely important at that point in the life of Al-Mukhtar. A man who by his own right should deserve his own lectures and his own biography. We don't talk about him enough. This man was the companion of Imam Ali alayhi salam, Mitham al-Tammar. He was one of the closest companions of the Imam. We don't have time to go through his life right now. We'll simply say that the Imam had considered him one of his closest companions and confidants. The Imam would give him not only normal knowledge, he would also teach him secret types of knowledge. He was one of those that were known to know the sciences, they call them, of al-manaya wal-balaya. He knew how people would die, and he knew what would the next developments in society would be. And he told many people exactly how they were going to die and what would happen next in society, all from the teachings of Imam Ali alayhi salam. In fact, Mitham had gone right before to Mecca, perhaps to see Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. History tells us that he was not able to encounter the Imam directly, so he talked to some other people and he sent his salam indirectly to the Imam, and then he came back. And on his way back to Kufa, Mitham al-Tammar was captured for nothing that he had done except that he was Mitham al-Tammar. Muawiyah, it is said that when he would curse Imam Ali alayhi salam, he would also curse Mitham at the same time. That's how much they knew that he played important roles. And so a lot of our scholars say that Mitham al-Tammar was sent on missions. He's not randomly traveling to go see Imam al-Hussein. Whether history tells us he saw the Imam or not is secondary. We know that he's on a mission, that there are things being organized and planned and coordinated, and these are some of the main players that are receiving instructions and acting based on those instructions. So Mitham al-Tammar encounters Al-Mukhtar in jail. Al-Mukhtar is not really in a state right now to talk about anything much, dealing with a very severe injury on his face and not really sure how he's going to escape this, when most likely his end should be that he is executed. Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad is known to be ruthless. Mitham al-Tammar starts to talk to Al-Mukhtar during that time, and part of what he tells him is that we will both leave this jail. We won't stay in this jail. I will be